I've played through the Mages Guild questline in Oblivion and Oblivion Remastered way too many times. And I have to say, I'm kind of surprised how incompetent everyone in the guild is. It's kind of astounding how inept most of the members of the guild seem to be. From most of the quests going wrong in some sort of way, or the recommendations dealing with the members of each of the local chapters of the Mages Guild, and most of your recommendations revolving around petty squabbles that they have with other mages. It really is interesting to me that they chose to make the storyline of the guild that's supposed to be about the smart people, the nerds, the people in fantasy who are supposed to know about the esoteric knowledge of the magical world around them and have hidden secrets and all that stuff, and yet they're just a bunch of idiots and can't do anything right. I find that such an interesting choice to make in the writing of the Mages Guild questline. So I thought I would make a video just sort of breaking down how inept and incompetent, and sort of quantify how incompetent the Mages Guild is in Oblivion. Analyze the lore implications of what then happens now that the Mages Guild is kind of just a guild full of idiots. But before doing that, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me make more of this content. Thank you. So our first introduction to the Mages Guild is having to get the recommendations from each of the individual chapters in each of the major cities before we can enter the Arcane University. And most of these are dealing with petty squabbles among these dumb wizards, basically. The Bruma recommendation is with Janine, and basically she has lost one of the members of the guild. You have to bribe Volinaro to basically get him to tell you that Jaskar is playing a prank on her, and you have to also do a prank for them to get them to agree to it. Not really any magic is being learned or really involved. It's just like an office squabble. The Breville recommendation is also very similar. One wizard's had a crush on another wizard, and then so he steals the staff of the other wizard, and so basically the adult in the room has to tell you to go and wag your finger at one of them and get them to bring back the staff so that the other one isn't embarrassed. Like, these are supposed to be the people who are like the magical soothsayers of Tamriel, and yet they're fighting over petty squabbles and have crushes over one another that are, it's just ridiculous. Now, the Shadenhall recommendation is a little different, is the fact that Falcar is a necromancer. So he is not an idiot, he's not a nincompoop, but it is a little weird that basically he did send one of the associates of the Mages Guild to their death. No one ever heard about him, and they were totally just kind of chill about it. Like, yeah, well, maybe that'll work itself out, but we're not going to do anything about it. And so then you find one of them just drowned in the well. So I think that kind of shows that a lot of the people in that particular Mages Guild are just a bunch of idiots that didn't think to check on the one associate who ended up drowning. The Anvil and Coral recommendations, though, are actually pretty normal. One is asking you to retrieve a magical artifact, and you do get to learn some stuff, and you get to learn a spell, Fingers of the Mountain, which is good depending on what level you are when you do it, but at least you're like doing something vaguely magical. And the Anvil recommendation, at least you're doing some like official business for the guild, and you're stopping another wizard from just killing people on the side of the street as they're traveling from town to town. So you are actually doing something legitimate, at least in those recommendations. The Skingrad recommendation is also kind of, I guess, better than the Shadenhall one, because you're saving the associate before they get killed, but also kind of stupid that they told the associate to just go practice in a cave, basically, and then decided to barricade himself with zombies in said cave. So definitely kind of some nincompoops there, but not as horrible as Shadenhall. Leyawiin is an interesting situation because it is kind of full of incompetent people, but I don't know how much you can say is incompetence as much as it's sabotage with Kalthar. But still, the fact that it is sort of just petty squabbles between ranks of wizards is really the most important thing that's going on here. And you then have to kill Calthar over it. And fortunately you do bring everything back to the way it was. But once again, nothing really that magical or significant kind of happens. Once again, you're kind of just helping out the local chapter deal with its petty squabbles. So my criteria for deciding how much of the Mages Guild is incompetent versus competent, I decided to either put them in the category of nincompoop or actual wizard, and see how many of the people in the Mages Guilds are nincompoops and how many are wizards. Now, dealing with the local recommendation quests, there are a bunch of nincompoops in the Mages Guild. There's a lot of them. But once you deal with them, well, maybe things start to turn around when you get to the Arcane University. I mean, when you first meet Raminus Paulus, he at least even acknowledges the fact that you didn't get to deal with the guild's best and brightest, but you are now finally here, and you've paid your dues, and you can now start really doing the important work of the Mages Guild. And I don't think Raminus Paulus is a nincompoop. I think he's just trying to do the best with what he has in front of him. And he does, unfortunately, send you to an ambush of necromancers who have decided to attack and kill the grove, the people of the grove where they make the wizard staves for the guild, which is obviously another sign that the guild is maybe not the most competent thing in the world. And then he then sends you to go retrieve a book from the Count of Skingrad, Hasseldor. And he sort of just tells you, oh, it's just a normal fetch quest, just go get a book. But then you find out that it's actually was supposed to be a way for you to inadvertently spy on the Count, who then saves you from a bunch of necromancers. But Raminus Paulus very much did not tell you what the deal was and kind of let you just walk blindly into that trap, basically. So, as much as I would say he is competent, but he doesn't have much faith in the average guild member. I think he probably just has to deal with so many of them that he's just like, it's probably easier just for me just to not tell you and then learn what I can in the periphery. We're then sent to Vaknin to sort of deal with a puzzle quest of shooting certain spells at a pillar, and apparently all these mages haven't been able to figure it out, but they obviously never thought to put two and two together of the Alien Ruin reference text with the symbols that they're seeing on the walls. I mean, it's a fun puzzle quest, and it's interesting, but the fact that multiple wizards could not figure out how to put those two things together, reference a text, and then shoot the spell at the pillar, once again, kind of a sign of the incompetence there. And then we can kind of get to the higher-ranking members of the guild, other than Raminus Paulus. And Erlov is also kind of an idiot, because he just believes that he should take the Bloodworm Helm and try to use it as best he can to fight the necromancers, but obviously gets in way over his head and summons a bunch of Daedra to the fort that he's in, which also gets swarmed with necromancers, so obviously not the smartest guy there. And then Kariana is competent, but a double agent for the necromancers, which is not great. So she's not a nincompoop, but also not great of an organizational thing if one of the members of the council, the Grand Council, is a double agent for the necromancers, which seems to be sort of a running issue with the Mages Guild ever since Hannibal Traven, the Archmage, decided to outlaw necromancy. And we kind of learned that this is sort of a common trope of necromancers sneaking into the ranks of the Mages Guild in the book The Black Arts on Trial. Necromancy, commonly called the Black Arts, has a history that dates back before recorded time. Virtually all the earliest laws of the land make mention of it as expressly forbidden on pain of death. Independent practitioners of the arts of sorcery, however, continued its study. The Sigic Order of the Isle of Artium, precursor to our own Mages Guild, also forbade its use, not only because it was dangerous, but their belief in the holy and unholy ancestor spirits made it heretical. Again, despite this, we hear many stories of students and masters who ignored this stricture. When Vanus Galerian left Artaeum, he may have disagreed with the Syzygy on much, but he also refused to allow necromancy to be taught in the guild. Almost 1100 years have passed since the time of Vanus Galerian, and there have been many archmagisters to lead this guild. The question of necromancy has continued to be asked. The strictures against it in the guild have never been lifted, but attitudes about it have shifted back and forth over the years. Some magisters have been inclined to ignore it entirely, some have fought very actively against it, and still other magisters have been rumored to be necromancers themselves. In my new role as Archmagister of the Mages Guild, it is my duty to set policy on this matter. Though I have my own opinions on the black arts, I took counsel with two of the most learned mages in the Empire, Magister Voth Careless of Corinth and Magister Unlet Gratkog of Orsinium, and we debated for 2 days. What follows are summaries of the salient points of the debate, arguments and counter-arguments, which led to the resolution of the Mages Guild on the subject of necromancy. Argument by Master Gratkog, necromancy is poorly understood. We will not make it disappear by ignoring it. As an intellectual institution dedicated to the study of magical arts and sciences, we have obligations to the truth. Censoring ourselves and our scholarship is antithetical to our mission of neutrality and objectivity. Counter-argument by Master Carlos. The Mages Guild must balance its quest for knowledge with responsible caution and ethical standards. It is not censoring a student's course of study to have him proceed cautiously with purity of purpose. It is not limiting a student's freedom to set rules and boundaries. Indeed, it is essential. Argument by Master Carlos. Necromancy is an entheonym throughout the civilized world. To embrace it publicly, the Mages Guild would inspire fear and hostility in the populace at large. Vanus Galerian wanted this institution to be unlike the Syzygy order, which was elitist and separatist. We ignore public opinion at our own risk. We will certainly lose our charters in many places, including very likely the whole of Morrowind, where sentiment against necromancy is very strong. Counter-argument by Master Gratkog. Yes, we should be sensitive to the concerns of the community, but they should not and must not dictate our scholarship. Necromancer to many uneducated persons simply means an evil mage. It is madness to limit our work because of prejudices and half-formed understandings. It is an affront to the purpose of objective study to turn our back on subject merely because of public opinion. Argument by Master Gratkog. Necromancers are the scourge of Tamriel, whether operating independently or in concert with the Slodes or King of Worms, Mannimarco. They are responsible for many horrors, animated zombies and skeletons, and other forms of the undead. To best combat this menace, we must understand the powers of necromancer, and we cannot do that by restricting our studies of the black arts. Counter-argument by Master Carlos. No one is disputing the threat of the black arts. In fact, that is the very essence of my argument against the Mages Guild making it a school to be taught to our initiates. We can and should know what our enemy is capable of, but we must be careful not to step into a trap of looking too deep into his ways, and making those ways our own. We do no one any good if, by studying the evil ways, we become evil ourselves. Argument by Master Carlos. Necromancy is inherently dangerous. One cannot dabble in it. The simplest spell requires the spilling of blood, and immediately begins to corrupt the caster's soul. This is not conjecture, but simple fact. It is irresponsible of the guild to teach and thereby encourage a sort of magical study which has proven itself time and time again to bring nothing but terror and misery on the practitioner and the world. Counter-argument by Master Gratkog. All schools of magic are dangerous to the uninitiated. A simple fireball spell from the School of Destruction can cause great harm when cast by a novice, not only to others but to the mage themselves. The School of Mysticism, by its very nature, forces the practitioner to divorce his mind from logic, to embrace a temporary sort of insanity, which one might argue is very like corrupting one's soul. Argument by Master Gratkog. The guild already permits some forms of necromancy. The schools of magic are, as we know, artificial constructs, originally formulated by Vanus Galerian to divide and thereby simplify study. They have changed many times throughout the years, but at their heart every master knows they are all linked together. When a student of conjuration summons a guardian ghost, he is touching the school of necromancy. When a student of enchantment uses a trapped soul gem, he too may be considered guilty of a black art. The School of Mysticism, as I have stated before, has some kinship with necromancy as well. To state that students may not learn the ways of necromancy is to stifle common skills in the other, more historically legitimate schools of the guild. Counter-argument by Master Carlos. Yes, the schools are intertwined, but the standard spells of each school have passed the proof of time. We know that a student of mysticism properly instructed will not permanently be harmed by his experience. In many ways, it is a question of extremes. How far would we permit our studies to take us? Necromancy by its nature relies on the practitioner going further into the darkness than is wise, virtually guaranteeing his destruction. It has no place in the Mages Guild. Conclusion. The risks of studying necromancy outweigh its usefulness. The guild does not wish to censor the study of any of its members, but will not tolerate studies in the black arts, except in limited form for the purpose of combating its evil adherents. This may only be done by rare individuals who have proven themselves both highly skilled and highly cautious, and then only with express permission and supervision. Afterward, I regret to acknowledge the truth behind the rumor that Master Lucita Grakog was more than an apologist for necromancy. She was a necromancer herself. Upon this revelation, the Knights of the Lamp attempted to arrest her at the guild house in Orsinium, but she made good on her escape. We have every confidence in the replacement magister in Orsinium. Though I disagreed, I respected her logical reasoning enough to include her arguments in this book. I see no reason to remove them. It is disappointing, however, to see that her interest in the truth was nothing more than a euphemism for her slavery to the black arts. This unfortunate situation merely illustrates how essential it is for guild members to be wary of the lure of necromancy and to be vigilant to its practitioners' infiltration in our Mages Guild. So, Hannibal Trevin, I think in this story of the black arts on trial, kind of damns himself a little bit, because he says that we need to be wary of necromancers infiltrating the Mages Guild, and yet one of his closest advisors turns out to be a necromancer. So, I think we can very confidently put Hannibal Trevin in the nincompoop category. I mean, he did do the right thing at the end of the day by sacrificing his soul to the colossal soul gem so that the hero of Kvatch could kill Mannimarco without getting enthralled by him. But still, he's a large reason why they kind of ended up where they are, where he had to do that. So a lot of members of the upper echelons of the Mages Guild are kind of nincompoops or necromancers, which is not a great sign for the organization. Another high-ranking member of the Mages Guild is Hakato, who is the High Chancellor of the Empire's Council. And a fan theory is that he is the main character of the very first Elder Scrolls game, Arena. Nothing confirmed about that, though. Nothing directly in Oblivion tells us that Hakato is a nincompoop, but the lore after Oblivion kind of tells us that he's a nincompoop. He does sort of a bad job of holding together the Empire, and does sort of a bad job as well of picking the next Emperor. The Empire very much falls into a worse place after he is shepherding it to the next Emperor. That's something that we learn in Skyrim. So, unfortunately, things could have been better under his watch. And also, he's not really involved in the Mages Guild at all, at least in the quest, so he kind of has to get lumped into the nincompoop pile as well. So, after tallying up all of the nincompoops from the quests of the Mages Guild questline, as well as I also did some research of the other members, I sort of picked fights with them. If they didn't really do anything interesting when I attacked them, they kind of fall into the nincompoop pile. Also, all of the teachers who incorrectly teach the spells that they say they teach, I think that's kind of just straight to the nincompoop pile. I know that that is like a mistake in making the game, where they probably made those lines and then later on changed it so that each school of magic is specialized at each branch of one of the Mages Guilds. But I think it kind of needs to be canonized into lore. I think, some of those mistakes do, matter. And so I'm just going to put those guys in the nincompoop pile as well. And so we're about 35 nincompoops out of 66 total members of the guild, which then takes us to about 53% of all members of the Mages Guild are nincompoops, which is really not good. Over half of the mages in the Mages Guild are nincompoops. I think in a normal situation, people are sort of worried about one or two bad apples in an organization. The fact that more than half of the people in the Mages Guild are nincompoops is kind of a damning statistic for the Mages Guild. And I think that this is sort of actually reflected in the story of Skyrim 200 years later. It kind of makes sense that the Mages Guild gets disbanded after Oblivion, because everyone in the guild right now are idiots. And I think that that's a really interesting writing choice, that they chose to make the Mages Guild, which is traditionally supposed to be, very capable and arcane, knowledgeable people of the fantasy world are now just a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're doing. And I think that's a really interesting sort of going against type that makes the writing of Oblivion really interesting and really fun. And it kind of goes, I think, with sort of the greater tenets of fantasy. I think, obviously, a player character has the ability to fall into one of the three main categories of a player: fighter, rogue, and mage. But as far as population distribution of a fantasy world goes, there aren't really supposed to be that many mages. Mages are supposed to sort of be rare. And I think that the Mages Guild in Oblivion is the sign that things kind of got a little too mainstream and too many sort of non-abled people got too involved and kind of sunk the organization, unfortunately. And it kind of shows that learning magic and being masterful with magic is really difficult and something that the average person really doesn't have too much of a business doing. And I think it is respectable that Galarian founded the Mages Guild, because the Psijic Order is very mysterious and we don't know really much about it other than our sort of very loose interactions that you have with them, specifically in Skyrim. So it was well intentioned what Galarian was doing, but eventually the issue is that when you cater only to sort of the most common denominator of people, unfortunately sort of these problems will arise where there's sort of an organizational rot, I guess, where just too many nincompoops get involved, and then you have to deal with what happens in the Mages Guild is there's too many people who are incompetent and things fall apart. And while things do stay together when they're dealing with Mannimarco, and I also do now kind of appreciate that they made Mannimarco kind of boring and sort of not really that all-powerful. I did another video about Mannimarco and kind of how disappointing he is as a villain in Oblivion. It kind of makes sense that just a normal wizard guy, not like a god like he is at the end of Daggerfall, but just a normal wizard necromancer guy is able to take down this organization of nincompoops, because that's what they are. It actually kind of makes some sense in that regard. And while the Hero of Kvatch does save the guild from falling apart in that particular moment fighting Mannimarco, unfortunately, he doesn't stay with the guild for very long, because we all know that it's canon that at the end of Oblivion, the Hero of Kvatch takes on the role of Sheogorath. And so he's not involved with the guild really too much after what he does with Mannimarco. And so with that and so many nincompoops running the show there, kind of obvious that it would kind of fall apart. And that's what happens after Oblivion. The Mages Guild gets basically shut down. And then the College of Whispers and the Synod, who are more sort of arcane and more elitist organizations of magicians, decide to fill in the vacuum there and be the magical services of the Empire. But it also can be a showing of why the Empire kind of falls to the Thalmar in the Great War, at least originally, is that the Thalmar are heavy magic users and probably used the fact that the Empire was sort of lacking in the magical department to their advantage, and that's kind of how they were able to probably take such a strong position in the initial stages of the Great War. So I think it's safe to say that, yeah, the Mages Guild is full of a bunch of idiots, and yeah, they kind of deserved what happened to them between Oblivion and Skyrim. But hopefully in Elder Scrolls 6, we will maybe not get to see a return to the Mages Guild, but maybe something will take its place. But thanks for joining me on this lore deep dive. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me make more of this content. Thank you.